Go people, howdy, 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 howdy. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Am I saying howdy enough? I think I am. I am saying enough howdies. Welcome everybody to the Ask Mike Anything live stream. We are going to have a very interesting, although a slightly shorter than usual day today. What we're going to be talking about today is the idea of using Type 2 hypervisors. In particular, we're going to be working with VirtualBox, although any Type 2 hypervisor can do what we're going to be doing over the next few sessions. And that is, how can I use virtualization software to basically reduce the amount of hardware necessary to teach myself basic networking. And that's what this is going to be all about. And so what we're going to be doing here is, today I want to get some concepts down pat, because I get very worried that people don't know what a LAN is. And one of the interesting things about using hypervisors and virtual machines is you can virtualize networks, but you better make sure you know what you're talking about networks before you start to virtualize them. The other thing I need to warn you about is that if any of you guys were around last year, we had done a course similar to this. We actually didn't work exactly the way I wanted, and it wasn't nearly as complex. We were just talking about Windows Server. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to make some changes from that, fairly dramatic ones. In particular, VirtualBox has had a major upgrade in the last year. We're now in VirtualBox version 7. If by any chance you think you can recreate what I'm about to do in an earlier version of VirtualBox, forget about it. The interface changes alone confused the bejeezers out of me, and I know VirtualBox. Before we get started on anything else, what I'm going to strongly recommend is that you start off with a machine that has an absolute rock bottom minimum of 16 gigabytes of RAM, although I would sure love to see 32 or even 64 gigabytes of RAM. The machine I'm using here has either 64 or 128 gigabytes of RAM, and I'll be running many, many, many virtual machines simultaneously because I've got the RAM to be able to do it. Storage isn't that big of a deal, nor is processing power, to be honest with you. Most of the stuff we're doing is pretty simple. It's not a lot of heavy lifting on your hardware, but RAM is a problem. And 16 would be like the absolute minimum. 32, 64 would make me a lot happier. Other than that, honestly, the rest of your hardware that you're going to be using for your host system, I don't care about. I'm running Windows 10, mainly because I continue to refuse to go to Windows 11. That's just a personal choice. But this would run just fine in Windows 11 as well. VirtualBox version 7 runs great on Windows 11. So that's the base system, okay? Now from there, things are going to be a couple of extra changes that I want to be talking about. Not necessarily changes. Let's get some basics down before we go anywhere else. Let's just talk for a second here. In particular, what I'd like to talk to you guys about is what is a LAN. All right? The whole idea behind this setup I'm going to be configuring for you guys is that you can use it to teach yourself almost anything you need to know about networking. About the only thing you can't teach yourself with the setup I'm going to be showing you is you're not going to be able to deal with like link lights on switches. But other than that, protocols, analytics, OSI, the setup I'm going to show you guys works on pretty much anything. And it has a lot of flexibility. What I will probably do, even though I hate doing this, I don't like to create labs. The reason I don't like creating labs is, number one, the lifespan of a lab is like 6 weeks at best, because software starts to change, hardware changes, seasons change, and any established lab I create that isn't super generic lasts about 6 weeks before something changes and everybody's like, it doesn't work. And I'm trying to support a 2-year-old lab that I don't even like anymore to teach DNS or something like that. I would rather you just make the stuff go. If we're going to learn about DHCP, for example, then I want you to make the DHCP go. So everybody has an IP address and a DNS server address and a default gateway. You see where I'm coming from? If we're going to be having a DNS lab, let's get DNS up and running so that we can, go to www.whatever.com and it shows up. But I will be doing some labs, not today, because we're really doing some basics here, but there will be some labs showing up as we get some of the main pieces put together. The end result of everything we're going to be doing here, folks, is we're going to have about 4 or 5 different types of virtualized local area networks configured through VirtualBox, as well as a little grouping of both Windows and Ubuntu Linux systems whose function is really to allow us to have endpoints to do things like ping and trace routes and whatever we might want to do. I will also be making routers in this demonstration. And in this demonstration, we won't be getting to routers today, folks. We've got a lot of other work. I'm going to be using OpenSense, which is an open source version of pfSense and something I like. It works real well. And it's relatively easy to configure. Guys, keep in mind there's a lot of options on there, but we'll get to that at another point. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let me see, do I have any questions coming up yet? Richard Reeves, just passed Network Plus. Congratulations to you. Joan Livy TC, Mike, a pass A plus, a net plus. All right, well done. Good to see you. Happy to see these passes. This land is my land. Thank you, Telowit. This land is my land. There are many like it, but this one is mine. Without my land, I am nothing. Without me, my land is nothing, right? Are we doing the Marine Corps thing here? Love to play Quake Team Fortress over LANs. You guys keep in mind, LANs are still alive and well today. And it shocks me how few people know what a LAN is, which to me is like the most basic group of networking, and that people are unsure. I'm assuming you guys have a fairly good understanding on some of this stuff, but I do want to do a little quick review. So let's start our review with this. This, my friends, is a switch, okay? The primary function of a switch is to act as an interconnectivity for both layer 1 and layer 2 connectivity for individual hosts. These hosts can be Windows desktops, or they can be laptops, or they can be printers, or they can be cameras, or whatever it might be, using Ethernet as our type 1, type 2 connectivity. This is a Ethernet switch, okay? So anything I plug into an Ethernet switch, Windows desktop computers, or a camera, or a printer, or whatever it is, they can all send and receive Ethernet frames to each other. So there are specific types of Ethernet frames that are designed to go out to everybody. There's like, you use the MAC address of all Fs. That means it's sent out to everybody. Everybody hears it. Therefore, it's called a broadcast address. So when we do a broadcast with Ethernet, any device that is plugged in to that same switch, or I could have a stack of switches and they're all daisy chained together, whatever it might be. Anybody who can hear that broadcast is in the same broadcast domain. Broadcast domain. Broadcast domain. It's an important phrase. Get it in your head, okay? So anything within the same broadcast domain is a local area network or a LAN. So I can expand this fairly easily. Like, for example, if I want to, got myself a little 802.11 home router, switch, wireless access point. And if I do a setup like this, anything that I plug in here will be on the same local area network. And there's some argument for this, but I'm going to keep it simple in my head. any wireless devices that are coming off of this, because it's plugged into the same network, are also on the same LAN. Okay? So, because they can't hear each other's broadcasts. Absolutely. All right, let me get this off to the side. Okay. Are we cool with what a LAN is? I'm going to stall for a second. Is anybody going to ask me any LAN questions? Jeremy Parker, at this point, it doesn't matter whether it's managed or unmanaged. We're keeping it simple at this point. I don't remember if that one's managed or unmanaged. And Andre is asking, is that the GS308? I don't know. I think it's close to that if it isn't. All right. So everybody's happy with a LAN. Okay. So LANs have switches which filter and forward Ethernet frames, okay? Now, built into an Ethernet frame can be an IP packet, but we're keeping it simple at this point. So a LAN is going to have some layer 1, layer 2 technology that allows any broadcast to be heard by anybody else. Anybody within that is in the same local area network. All right, so let's take a look at this in a little more detail. Is this right? I think it is, Bob. Work. Okay. So let's take a look at this for a second. So here's my little switch. All right, no big deal there. Now, there could be a number of computers that are plugged into this switch. They can be plugged in wired, or if I want to, I can bring in that wireless access point, plug that in so it's chained up to the same to the same switch, and then any wireless devices. All of these collectively are going to be a local area network. Now, what's important here is what's up at top. Okay, do you see that address? Local area networks do not need IP addresses, but if you want to have a local area network and you want this local area network to connect to other local area networks through these things called routers, well, then you're going to have to give yourself IP addresses, okay? So all of the computers that are within that one broadcast domain, all of the computers that are within that same local area network share a common network ID in the world of TCP/IP. And I'm going to stick to IPv4 here. This works perfectly well with IPv6 too. It's just that the numbers are longer and I get lazy, all right? So if we take a look at this, I declare that every computer in this network has a IP address of 172.15.15.0, and when I use a 0 here, that means it could be any address from 0 to 255. And I know that because WAC24 means that last one is open and available for use. Well, where did this number come from? Well, it came from my mind, okay? Because I'm an expert at IP addresses, and I know that 172 addresses are, is that 170? I think I may have screwed up. It should have been 172.16. Oh, well. That I know that I know what IP addresses are available. They could have been allocated from somebody who owns a network that I connect to. I could have just typed these in. It doesn't matter at this point. Understand that the IP addresses came because I, Mike Meyers, popular author, chose that, all right? And we can get into public versus private IP and natting and all that stuff later. I don't want to confuse the world right now, kids. What I want everybody to understand is that every local area network is going to have some kind of network ID. Now, that network ID is either we're all just going to agree on it and type them in statically into all of our hosts, or we might have a DHCP server that passes it down, or a combination of both. Don't know, don't care. The most important thing for people to do when they're learning about networks is to document. So it is really important to me that we get comfortable drawing diagrams like this. Rounded rectangles with some network ID range. Forget the stuff in the middle, all right? I just need a rounded rectangle. And then sometimes, just to help ourselves out, we can call these human being names. You know, call this network 1 or network 2. There is nowhere in the world of computing where we just put in arbitrary names for our local area networks. But a lot of times when I'm drawing up a more complicated network environment, it's important to me to have names for the different LANs, even though there is no actual way to like type that name in anywhere. But you can sure type in IP addresses, and you have to. Either that or statically or through DHCP. All right. Are we okay with that? Let me see where everybody is. I know this should be really old hat for a lot of you guys, but I get terrified the moment I don't take a moment. Willie Diesel 22 just purchased your book, Mike. Thanks, Willie. Edgar Salinas. Hey, Edgar, how's it going, brother? Good to see you, man. Hey, Catherine. All right, so it looks like everybody's happy with me so far. Okay, good. Pretty basic stuff, right? So, then what's a router? If a switch filters and forwards traffic based on Ethernet MAC addresses, what's a router do? Well, a router is a device that filters and forwards traffic based on IP addresses. It's a layer 3 device. So, in order to have two LANs to be able to talk to each other, we interconnect them with a router or a layer 3 switch. And if you want to have 2 or 3 different LANs connecting, one router can have 2 connections or 3 connections or 5. In fact, the other nice thing about a router, folks, is it doesn't even have to be Ethernet. I can have Ethernet on one end and help me out here, DOSIS on the other, Ethernet on one side and ATM on the other. So routers don't really care about the layer 1, layer 2 protocol. The router needs to have ports that can connect to those layer 1, layer 2. Oh, come on, guys. Anytime you've ever looked at a, like the router in your house, it's probably got, Ethernet on one side, and on the other side, it's got a fiber optic cable or a cable TV F-type connector or whatever it might be. What's important here is that when we start firing up VirtualBox, what we're going to have to do is, before we do anything else, is we have to create networks. Once the networks are created, well, then we can put anything we want in there. We can take this virtual machine over here and put that in network A, or put this one in there and put it in network B. You get the idea? But so when you're learning about networks using virtual machines, you kind of have to pre-make some networks for yourself. And that's a really important step. Now, VirtualBox, as well as Hyper-V and VMware, VMware Player as well, make this pretty easy, but it can get a little hairy at the same time. So what I want you to do is, let's take a look real quick. And what I'd like to do is fire up VirtualBox. I've got VirtualBox up and running. And let's talk about how VirtualBox creates virtual networks. All right, so welcome to my VirtualBox. You can see it's just chock full of different computers in here. The secret to networks with VirtualBox is to go here under Tools. Oh, by the way, this is all changed in 7. So if you're using an earlier version of VirtualBox, good luck finding it. I think you have to pull it down from here somewhere. So anyway, we're going to go to Network. So what we look at here is you're going to see there are 2 types of networks that we can create. There is one called a host-only network, and then there's another one called a NAT network. Now keep in mind, folks, there's a lot more, all right? VirtualBox allows you to create 2 other kinds of networks. One is what they call an internal network, and another one is called a bridged network. So what I want to do is let's take a moment and review all these. Folks, this is extremely important. If you're seriously considering using a Type 2 hypervisor to teach yourself about DNS or DHCP or Windows Active Directory or Kali Linux or whatever you want to do with it, this is the most important part. Okay, let's watch together. So in particular, if you'll notice here, I only have 3 types of networks. There's host only, all right, and I can create more host only networks if I want to. So a host only network basically manifests as a direct connection between the virtual machine you're making and the host. That's pretty much it, okay? They are used, but not a lot. What's more important are NAT networks. A NAT network is a network that basically kind of has, here, I should show you this, I'm sorry. So there's host only, here's NAT networks. I wish I could make this bigger. Can I make this bigger? No, it's pretty locked. So a NAT network is a network, but it has like a built-in NAT and a DHCP server as well. So NAT networks are kind of interesting. And all hypervisors have the equivalent of this. So it's like they make a network, but they kind of put a router in there for you. And the router is connected to your internet through your host machine. But on the other side, it's passing out some address. NAT networks are a very popular way to learn about networking in situations where you have 3 or 4 computers and you want them to actually connect to the internet. NAT networking is usually the way to go. Let's go back and look at this a little bit more. So we're basically, when we create the NAT network, we're basically adding a DHCP server. So we can change properties if I want to. So here it says an IPv4 prefix. Here, if I wanted to, I can do 172.16.88.0 WAC24. And what I'm doing here, folks, I am basically saying any virtual machine that joins this network is going to get a 172.16.88. something address. I could even turn off DHCP if I wanted to. That would be a weird thing to do, but you could. And also, if we want to do IPv6. I usually just keep IPv6 turned on no matter what I'm doing in terms of virtual networks, simply because, well, IPv6 is here, kids. And so why not have it there? Now, there is one more I want to show you, but I'm just going to tease you with this real quick. This is cloud networks. I have not messed with this. I was getting started doing it, but at this point, I can't quite do it. Ooh, got Discord information coming up. No, naughty Discord. And there is a way to, in essence, connect your computers here up to a cloud as well. But I have not done that yet, so I'm going to sneak out of here. So, like, you click Create, and then for a provider, you have to set all that up ahead of time. But it looks promising. We don't need to have cloud computing to do this. I'm not going to lie and tell you I'm not tempted. I have made a few starts on the cloud network, but I'm not in a position where I'd want to teach that yet. All right. So you'll sit there and go, well, Mike, so you were talking about bridged networks, right? I mentioned that. Or internal networks. There was no settings for that. You're right. There's no settings for that because these types of networks don't really need preset IP addresses or anything like you would with a host-only network or a NAT network. In that case, we ignore this completely, and let's just go over and pick an arbitrary system. So here's an Ubuntu desktop system. It's turned off. So I'm just going to go into Settings and head down to Network. And now here's where I have all these choices. So here's Bridged. So that's how I select a bridged adapter. A bridged adapter basically just means bridge it to the real network. So the actual IP address that my computer's getting here, my host system, will actually go into this virtual machine as well. The other one is an internal network. This is kind of the workhorse of these things. For an internal network, all you got to do is give it a name. I'm going to call it Chim Chim. Come on, there's got to be a... Oop, got the caps all wrong there. So I call it Chim Chim. I hit OK. And it is now connected to Chim Chim. Anytime I create or edit any of the other virtual machines on this system under network, if I choose internal network, there's going to be a choice for Chim Chim. That's all you got to do. Pretty easy, huh? Yeah, all right. So the other thing I want you guys to take a look at here is that VirtualBox allows a maximum of 4 connections per computer. So that can be an issue in particular with routers, because some of the labs I want to do, we're going to create some routers with 2 connections, and they will act, bark, smell, taste exactly like a regular gateway router. But I want to do more fun stuff. And for example, with OpenSense, we can actually do, BGP. How many guys have ever set up a BGP network? I have. It's kind of interesting. So we could do a BGP. We better keep that as an internal network, because you do not want to start spitting BGP data out onto the internet. They'll stop you. But let's take a look. I don't want to get into router configuration today. Really what I'm more interested in is that, number one, you're comfortable with LAN versus a WAN. A WAN is anytime 2 LANs or more are connected by 1 or more routers. The internet is the biggest WAN there ever was. But it is nothing more than local area networks interconnected with routers. That's all the internet is, folks. That's all it is. So we got to keep that in mind when we're thinking about that stuff. That's number one thing. Number two, I want you to think about obtaining and successfully downloading 7.06 VirtualBox. If you want to do this in Hyper-V, or if you want to do this in VMware, you can do it. I don't know how to do it at a super granular level, and I can't handhold through very, very specific questions. Maybe through the Discord channel we can do some of that, but the best guarantee I can give you of success with what we're going to be doing over the next few weeks is doing it with VirtualBox, and in particular VirtualBox 7.06. That's the other thing. So hopefully you're downloading a copy of VirtualBox, you're shaking out whatever bugs you might have, you've installed the extensions pack, all that kind of extra fun stuff. You understand what LAN and WAN is, you're conceptualizing the idea of a switch versus a router, and that you're understanding the different types of networks that can be configured in VirtualBox. At this point in time, if you've actually downloaded all of this, feel free to play, but I'm going to warn you, we'll probably end up deleting any NAT networks you make or any internal networks you make, so we have a good clean slate to get us started. The other thing you might want to consider doing at this point is downloading a copy of Ubuntu Desktop. I don't care which one, whatever LTS, long-term service version is out right now, 16 something, Dave, I can't remember. Getting that downloaded and being ready we can make clone copies, which is a beautiful thing that this version of VirtualBox is doing for us. So we can make one copy of Ubuntu Desktop and then keep it as like the reference copy, and then make clones and actually play with the clones. And the same thing with Windows 10 or Windows 11. But you want to have those downloaded and ready to go too. And then the last thing that you might want to consider doing to be ready is go ahead and you might want to get a copy of OpenSense, the OpenSense ISO. I don't remember what the current version or the one I'm playing with is. One moment, please. Oh, this is not right. I have OpenSense version 21.7.1, but that's dated. So I will have, yeah, so I'm going to grab whatever the latest copy of OpenSense is, and because we want to do a build. We want to do a build from scratch. I also need to stress to you folks is that, so we're going to make virtual machines that are routers, okay? Things like VMware have pretty advanced features that allow them to basically virtualize routers if you really wanted to go that way. I think it's good practice to configure routers. So I'm going to go ahead and instead, and VirtualBox does not have inter-routing capability. So we have to make our own routers. But I think it's actually kind of fun. There's the only reason I use OpenSense is mainly because it allows me to do dynamic routing protocols, which most people don't get a chance to do. But there are a large number of software routing tools out there, even the old Tomato and stuff like that, which are great, are absolutely fine. The other thing I like about OpenSense compared to a lot of other software router solutions is that OpenSense is a firewall, but that's not its main job. Its main job is to be a router. Whereas a lot of the other tools that you can find out there, especially the free ones, are first and foremost firewalls. And then if you do something really weird, you can go ahead and get it to do some routing stuff. So basically, the goal is, when I'm doing routing, I want to do classic routing, then I want to do NATed routing, I want to do routing in IPv4 and IPv6, I want to do DNS with routing, I want to do DHCP with routing, or basically DNS and DHCP dealing with routers. And that's going to give me some really core knowledge of networking that is going to make me very, very happy. And in the meantime, like for example, like by using Linux systems, getting used to running IP commands, ping and little stuff like that. How do you set up a DHCP client in Linux? How do you set up a DHCP server? And can you? And yes, you can. So that's really what the goal is. By the time we're done with all this, folks, the only thing we're going to achieve is a very inexpensive way to be able to do a lot of very cool, otherwise very expensive configuration that would normally be done with hardware. And I'm going to try to get some cloud stuff in. I'm so intrigued by that, but I haven't really had a chance to play with that. All right, so I think that covered the big bases that I want to cover today. So first of all, I want to make sure, guys, are we all in agreement? Sorry, I haven't looked here in a while. Ben Bork, in how far is a Bluetooth considered a personal network? Well, Bluetooth has a function called PAN, or personal area network, but I wouldn't consider Bluetooth a personal network in any way. Don Odinga, Mike, what more can you do with OpenSense? It's a full-blown router and firewall IDS, IPS platform. It's very powerful. Current OpenSense is 23.1. I will make sure we have the latest version. I'm going to delete these and we'll start from scratch. I was doing some practice with OpenSense and I've actually had a couple of problems installing it, so we'll figure it out. So that's the big stuff so far. How are we doing on time today, kids? All right, it's 2:34. I do have to stop a little on the earlier side today. More lawyers. But do keep in mind a couple of things. Number one, we've got all kinds of interesting announcements. Yeah, now I do need to warn you, Don, I don't want to turn this into an OpenSense course. I want to turn it into a networking course, and I find OpenSense to be one of the more convenient tools to allow me to learn about networking. Oh, we do have a lot of stuff going on. Okay, guys, do remember, just because you're nice enough to be here, we have our usual discount. It's if you buy our ebook and you buy the practice questions, you get a 50% discount, which is an incredible deal. This goes for any of our products that have an ebook and a practice question. There's quite a few of those. Just head over to www.total7.com, head to our merchant area, say you're interested in Network Plus. just load the Network Plus ebook into your cart and load the Network Plus TotalTester, that's what we call our practice questions, into your cart. Type in the magic code ARCADE, ARCADE, you get 50% off. It's a ridiculously good deal. Also, my email addresses, if you ever want to get a hold of me for any old reason. I'm not queued up for that. Let's get queued up. It's dead, Jim. Anyway, Dave Rush has got it. My email address is in there, michaelm@totalsim.com or michaelm@nationalcyber.com. So you're welcome to get a hold of me there. I think that covers most of that. Yeah, lawyer area network. Boy, you got that right, Tolwit. Do keep in mind that we now have officially changed. Siegfried Vanderweek, thank you so much for helping us and letting, it's now the official Total Seminars channel. Total Seminars is really trying to get my name off of everything, but whatever. But the Discord channel is now official. It's there in the, did Dave post that up there? I don't think he did. Anyway, it is in the description for all of our shows. If you guys weren't around on Wednesday, you absolutely owe it to yourself to check out Steve Nicholson's, it's right here in the Total Seminars channel on YouTube. Steve Nicholson did an amazing chat. And where'd it go? Yeah, he did a capture the flag practice, which is not an area of my skill set. And he got the Dave Rush seal of approval. So exciting. And so that's all good. I think we got everything else pretty well covered. I do have a few minutes. Let me see if there's any critical questions here. Don is all excited that I'm using OpenSense. You got it, brother. Oh yeah, goodness, forgot. Keep in mind that we have the next Cyber Now Labs info session is tomorrow. That is Tuesday, March 21st at 7 p.m. There's a link for it. Do check it out. They're offering like at least, I think it's a $500 discount for those who are joining. I think it's an absolutely amazing program. Please check out Cyber Now Labs today. Don Odinga, Mike, we are installing OpenSense on one of the virtual machines and virtually interconnecting them, I presume. We are, Don. In fact, we're going to be doing more than that. Don, we're going to be installing multiple OpenSense routers, and we're actually going to kind of create our own tier 1 internet eventually. That particular lab may be down the pike a little bit, but actually configuring them all for BGP and setting up like a tier 1 internet, which ought to be fun. And it's actually disturbingly simple. OSPF's got a lot more challenge to it, but I don't even see anybody doing OSPF for routing anymore. Yeah, Don, again, I'm not trying to teach OpenSense. That's not my goal here. My goal is to have a convenient router that anybody can use. As a matter of fact, let's get the router set up correctly, Don, and then we can copy them to each other. You know, it's a big file, but, you know, it's not that big. And, you know, sometimes we can do something like that as well. Coach, dumb question alert, no worries. So I have a VirtualBox downloaded on a MacBook. How can I download OpenSense? Well, what you need to do, Coach, first of all, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Never worry about that. You need to download the OpenSense ISO, okay? Once you have that OpenSense ISO on your Mac, then when you're setting up your virtual machine in VirtualBox, when it's asking where do I install the operating system from, just have it point at that OpenSense ISO file that you downloaded from OpenSense. I think it's opensense.org. Yeah, guys, everything we're playing with here is free. Everything we're playing here is free. The exception would be the Windows systems, but they're good for 90 days. So, yeah, you'll find yourself reinstalling Windows systems around here a lot. There you go. Outstanding, Dave Rush. Thank you so much. Mountaineer, you shattered my dreams, Mike. All I wanted was a working VM. Mountaineer, we've done plenty of just working virtual machines. What I would recommend you do, Mountaineer, is go ahead and get VirtualBox installed and go grab yourself. I like Ubuntu. For me, that's my favorite Linux. There's reasons to not like it, but go grab an Ubuntu ISO, make yourself a virtual machine, and make it a virtual Ubuntu machine on your Windows desktop or whatever you might have. I had the most interesting thing happen to me. Brian, my new assistant, not that new, he's been working for me for 6 weeks now. Haven't got rid of him yet. He must be doing something right. So we were talking about Craigslist. I don't know if you guys use Craigslist wherever you are, but it's pretty popular in the United States. It's a place for, looking for jobs and rental properties, that kind of a thing. And I was talking to Brian about Craigslist. I go, oh no, I went to the Craigslist website. He goes, it's an app. I go, no, Brian, it's www.craigslist.org. It's a website. And he's like, nah, it's an app. And it just hit me that for so many people out there, they're so phone-centric that things like desktop computers or, heaven forbid, laptop is really kind of outside of their ken. I worry, is that happening to any of you guys out there? Because when we're talking about virtual machines, you need a fairly hefty desktop computer. That is the tool set by which this is done. You could probably do it on a laptop, although I don't like that tiny amount of screen real estate. But I am unaware of a way to do virtualization on a phone. I'm sure there is. I mean, technically it's already virtualized, right? So, but I worry sometimes when people ask me questions, and that's why I started this entire session with, you need a fairly hefty computer. In fact, I am going to add one more thing. You probably ought to consider dual monitors. The main reason dual monitors becomes really handy is you're going to be running a number of virtual machines simultaneously, and to be able to have them in their own, have all the monitors up and visible in one shot is probably going to be very convenient. It's not required, but I think you'll like it. It'll keep you from jumping from one screen to the next. Here I go again. Mountaineer, apologies, I was talking about Hyper-V machine. Hyper-V is great too. Mountaineer, we did Hyper-V here 2 weeks ago. I'm very pro Hyper-V. In fact, everything we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks, you can do in Hyper-V, but there'll be tweaks that I won't be able to support. That's all I was trying to say. $32 gigs on a laptop, you should be good with that. Again, Jason, my only problem is monitors. Can you plug an external monitor into your laptop? That'd be about the only thing. Andre's like me. Desktops rule. Hardwired to the patch panel. Me too, brother. Yeah. Yeah, I only use 2 monitors also, but I have 2 5K 27-inch monitors, which is lots. So I'm pretty happy with that. All right, guys. Well, I think that's all we got ready for today. If you intend to follow along with this course, do keep in mind, number one, just because I'm talking about this particular topic, you can ask any question you want. This is Ask Mike Anything. Number two, I do hope that you'll install VirtualBox, bring down some virtual machines, both Windows and Linux. Don't worry about the networking. We'll configure the networking stuff together. But we'll do this again. We're going to do this again on Wednesday. Our next session. Dave, let's go ahead and continue this. I know we had some questions about VLAN. All right, so I got a question. Number one, would you guys like me, now that we've got the basic setup for our virtual machines, we did have questions about what is a VLAN, and I could do a VLAN course. That would just be a one-day, one-session thing. Would you rather me do, I'm not leaving, guys. Ben, don't raise your hand, just start typing. Would you like me to go ahead and address the VLAN question, or do you want me to jump in and continue the virtual machine stuff? Completely up to you. We got 1 vote for VLANs. Now keep in mind, VLAN's just going to be 1 session, and we'll get right back to the virtual machine. So I don't want you to think that this is a one or the other kind of a thing. Okay, Father Time. So the VM images, I'm having my students work on zips down to 15 gig. Can I make it smaller? Father Time, it depends on what you're working on. You can make virtual machine images that are half a gig. It just depends on what you're storing in there. A little mini version of Linux or something like that, or OpenSense, they can be quite small. A full-blown Windows 11 virtual machine, properly configured, is going to be huge. So I can't tell you. You'd have to tell me what VM you're trying to make, what operating system is in that VM. Techie Tommy, is there anything better than playing with computers all day and getting paid for it? No, there is not. All right. Okay, the people have spoken. Folks, this Wednesday, day after tomorrow, I'm going to do a VLAN talk. I think you'll like it a lot. I'm going to bring in some old Cisco equipment. And it's going to be, VLANs made out of rocks. But we'll talk about what VLANs are, some of the VLAN configuration issues, and go from there. Once we've got but that's only going to be one time. So this Wednesday, so a week from today, this Monday, we will start the full-blown virtual machine stuff. And we'll go through it again and again. So it should be fun. But we're going to go ahead and do VLANs. So have your questions ready on VLAN. VLAN's pretty straightforward stuff. I think you guys are going to get pretty kind of like, duh, really, is that it? But VLANs are important. I have 3 VLANs running just here in the house. So Dave, help me remember. We're going to do VLANs. Dave, I'm going to have to get a couple of the old Cisco routers up from the barn. That ought to be interesting to get those screens up. And we'll do VLANs. And then next Monday, we will start the virtual machines. We're going to be on virtual machines, I guarantee, at least 3, if not 4 sessions. Because it's fun. Once you get the core VMs, virtual machines set up, we can really do a lot of fun, interesting labs, So it'll be fun. All right, yeah, and Tolowit, I finally got my Hunter up to 72, but I'm so burnt out right now. I'm in Sholazar Basin and I'm bored. So I'm just going to hang on for a little while. Folks, I got to get out of here. I really do have lawyer stuff I got to deal with. I will be seeing you guys on Wednesday. Be ready to talk about VLAN and have your VLAN questions ready. So until then, this is your little Uncle Mikey saying bye-bye.